ReefDudes is sponsored by Ecotech Marine and Bulk Reef Supply.
Today we're going to update on the Waterbox 7225. What's going on, guys? Devin from ReefDudes. So it's been about 2 months since my last tank update, so we're far from overdue. So I'd figure I'd give you guys a little bit of a tank tour and a bit of an update on where things are at on the Waterbox 7225 Peninsula Reef Tank. So let's get to it. Now I really do love having a Peninsula tank. Just the fact that you kind of get multiple tanks in one is just a super cool aspect. You know, normally you have one long end of the tank to look at and skate, but on a Peninsula tank, of course, you get double sides. So it's kind of like having two tanks in one, which is a really cool feature. That being said, one of my favorites is really this end cap view. I love being able to see just down the long end of the tank and just how much depth it gives you. If I was to do a big custom tank again, had the space, I'd almost do something similar, 6 foot, but I think I'd try and do 3 to 4 feet wide. I think that'd be really, really cool. Now looking up top, I have briefly showed these off before, but I did make these 3D printed light shades for my tank, and that's just to cut room spill, and they definitely have made a fairly substantial difference. I did kind of couple this with lowering my lights about 1 inch, so the bar used to be about a bit higher, so I loosened the brackets on the wall and just dropped the whole thing down a bit. But with that and the light shades, it made a huge difference for just cutting out light spill within the room. On top of the tank, we do have the top lids top. This is a very sexy top. I'm very happy with it. I mean, they're not the cheapest things in the world, but they definitely add a nice touch to the tank. With mine, it almost doesn't show up as much on camera, but I went with the black mesh, and I did that because it reflects a lot more. Even just looking at the clear bits, you can see how much the black, it blends in a lot more. Like that right now on a clear one, super bright. With the black one, it kind of disappears a bit more. So definitely a big fan of going the black on that one. Fish wise, for the most part, everyone is doing awesome and happy. As I mentioned in one of my previous videos, there is a little bit of nipping going on with the yellow tang. You can say the fins are a little bit nipped, and I'm not sure if it's the bigger yellow or what, but definitely a little ragged on the edges. So hopefully we can get him fixed up or do something to reduce the aggression a bit more. Coral wise, for the most part, everything is fairly similar to the same. I did move a few things around. This I'm going to frag this soon just because you can see a bit of recession of the tissue just because it's growing up right in front of an MP60 at about 80%, so it's getting a lot of flow. You can see the stuff kind of directly in front of it is getting blasted, everything growing away from it's perfectly fine. So that is this one thing to consider with placement, how close it is, proximity to the pumps. And again, the rockscape was lower, but it's just grown out over time. So one of the things that tend to happen. A lot of these corals in here, a long time ago I didn't really lose it, but I did have some kind of recession on those, and they have been growing back, and there's tons of new growth, tons of little spikes coming up, which is awesome to see. My biggest issue now is honestly just stuff growing into each other. If I look up top at the Walt Disney over there and the other one, like it is kind of growing right into it. So I might have to do some creative fragging now just to make a little more space for them to grow. If we're looking at this guy, the rainbow loom, again, that is definitely taken over a massive chunk of my overflow wall, which is actually looking pretty cool. But, you know, it's really cool to see these branches growing off of it, the wall. I think that part's really cool. Taking a step back, you can see some of the corals have been getting very, very big. Like my red dragon has got absolutely huge, and I've fragged this thing back a few times now, and now I've just kind of let it go, but I will frag when it starts to grow into other corals. I do regret adding those minty zoas, so if anyone's local and wants them, I will happily give you a bunch. They kind of take over a little bit though, so you've been warned. And they can kind of see how they're slightly invasive in certain areas of the tank. One cool thing is before some of these corals, like that guy, was almost gone. It was next to like the tiniest little shilling on the rock, and it started to grow back all on its own, which is awesome. Same with some of these other corals. They were just like little shillings that kind of survived and grow back into new colonies, which I think is really cool to see. The Gonnies, of course, I do love the Gonnie garden. This is one of my favorite little aspects, and this is growing like crazy. It's really cool to see the growth. Like when the polyps aren't out, it's almost like weird little knobbies growing up and all over. So I may pop them out and frag some in the near future and put some in the other tank just to kind of have some backups of it. But I do really, really love the Gonnies. I do think they're pretty cool. The Bernardipori, I got a chunk there, and I do have some over here as well. It kind of looks like little sunflowers, yellow in the middle. They are a little bit aggressive. You can see they've been slowly growing up the rock and taking out a few of the zoas. But it's really cool color, really pretty. But again, you know, if I was to add that one again, I'd probably keep it a little more islandy for future. So you will notice a bit of a space opened up over here, and I used to have the goldenrod there. Now my goldenrod started as a single tiny little frag and grew to, you know, probably about 2 softballs worth. And then for whatever reason, it was really gold, it looked phenomenal, and then it just slowly faded. It lost all its color, it paled out, and then it was starting to die off on me. So I did toss that. I saved a little branch in case it bounces back, but the rest of it is gone. And I moved the Orange Passion up there and just freed up a little more space in the tank, which I personally think looks a lot better and slightly less depressing than seeing just that one coral that was just slowly biting the dust. This guy, whatever this one is, I'm not even sure, to be honest. This thing has been growing huge and awesome. It's going to need a trim soon. If I look at it this way, you can see it's starting to, you know, get close to the edge of the glass. And my magnet cleaner still does make it through there, but definitely is getting pretty dang big. The plate I've had it in there for ages and ages and ages. This guy's getting pretty big. But he's happy, he's doing good. The tentacles are in right now, but usually they're out super big chunky tentacles. Little Rockfire Island is doing pretty good overall. There is a few, you can see a couple of like that little baby pink one in there. So there definitely has been a little bit of growth over time in some babies, which is really cool to see. This guy was the Forest Fire Anarchopore. Again, that was another one that paled out on me. And I moved over here and it's actually starting to get its color back again. So I'm starting to see some nice oranges again. So it's nice to see it is definitely recovering. Coming over here, we've got a couple Echinata. That one's a bit of a punk, so that one's on its own little island. The Grafted Monty, this guy's looking pretty awesome. Again, this started as a tiny frag, now it's getting pretty big. And Monty, I tend to try and keep this one more islandy so I can frag it if I need to, just because I don't like it to get too big in the tank, but I do like to see it. This is going to need some future fragging here. These are the TSA Mardi Gras bounces. And I started with, I think, 2, and now there is a whole slew of them. But they're starting to kill off my golden Monty that's in there. So I think I am going to do a bit of fragging of the golden Monty, all the healthy stuff, and separate it from those bounces so that can grow back and be healthy and happy. This guy, I believe that's Marvin the Martian, that acro. Super fuzzy guy most of the time. And again, that was just like a little nubbin that's kind of growing really well. And that's kind of cool to see because this one is not really in the acro end of the tank. Like when you are planning a peninsula tank, you kind of got to consider where the power heads are, where your flow is. Now, if I had power heads over here, not a big deal. But when you're looking, you know, down that 6 feet worth of tank, usually you see most of my acros are in the first, you know, 2/3, 70% of the tank, because that's where most of the flow is from the MP60s. Where if we're way down at this end, it doesn't get a lot of flow. But it's actually been growing quite nicely for an acro, reasonably far away from my MP60s. I'm going to say it's probably about 5 feet away from the pumps. So that's been doing pretty good. Other Chaos Zoas, those guys are awesome, and those basically taking over this whole area. I've got a little bit more of the Rainbow Loom growing under there. This Pac-Man Deep Water, this guy is super cool. It grows like crazy over here, really nice coloration. These are, I believe it's a Maggie Tort, and I think that one's a Blue Stag, but you can kind of see because of the green within it. But those guys have been growing very well. These all started as like a couple little branches probably 5-6 years ago. And you can see how much of I have in the tank now, huge amounts. And that's all grown from a little frag just over many years. Back in the crack, got more of those slightly invasive teal zoas. Whoever wants them, have at her. We got the Duncan, do love these guys. It got pushed up against the glass, but really cool, nice easy coloration. A few of my Orange Citrus Rhodactis, love those, super bright. And again, more of the other Chaos is filling in chunks everywhere. Come up over here, we got the Orange Setosa that kind of hides in the corner, super bright coral. It's a really cool one. Little hawkfish peeking on me as always, really cool guys. If you've never had one, they're super curious, they're really entertaining fish. Branching, not Setosa, what's that called? Branching Cyphastria. It's kind of fallen over, kind of half hidden under there, but at least the top half is starting to regrow. Apparently a teeny bit of cyano, but if you look at the back of the overflow, you can just really appreciate and see from this side of the tank how much of that rainbow loom has encrusted over the back overflow. It's just tons and tons of encrusting, which honestly I think it looks pretty cool. Like at some point it is going to grow into the teeth and be an issue, but until then it looks pretty badass. This guy, I believe it is a spatulata, I think it's called. Really cool patterns, growth polyps. That one's called a Hellfire Millie, very bright. It is pretty awesome. Now it looks like my spatulata one is starting to grow over top of my Walt Disney, so I may have to do a bit of creative fragging and see if I can take a chunk and maybe I'll put it in this little open plateau over here, kind of where the hawkfish was. But yeah, overall things are looking pretty sweet. I did a bit of creative fragging here because, again, every time I clean the glass, you know, the green slimer is basically hitting the algae scraper. And that's one of my biggest issues now, is this everything's going towards the glass and you're just really limited on space. So through the cracks, we got a little bit of the rainbow clove polyps. That's a really cool one because it's kind of letting that grow out in between some of the acros. And then sometimes I almost forget about it, but you look in some of these cracks and you just got little rainbows throughout, which is kind of cool. And fish-wise, I'd say everyone is pretty happy, minus the tiny bit of fin nipping. Unfortunately, I did happen to lose one fish, that really cool orange line snapper. When I did a big water change, I had the top off one night, and unfortunately he jumped. So that was quite unfortunate. He was such a cool fish. So that is a big lesson to always keep a top on your tank for the sake of your little fishy friends. Sump-wise, no real big changes. If you've been following my videos recently, obviously my return pump got a nice big cleaning, which is long overdue. When I did a big water change, I did a big sump vacuum, and actually surprisingly, using that fauna salt, I had a massive drop in nitrates and phosphates after my water change. Now part of that is probably from vacuuming my sand bed, part of it's going to be from sucking up all the detritus in the sump. But yeah, it was like a mass reduction in nutrients, which was kind of a really cool, nice side benefit. As for the dosing zone, not a lot has changed, but the main supplementation is still done by the Geo's Reef calcium reactor. We do have Calcwaster on top of that, and that doses 5 to 6 liters a day. And on top of that, I also do have I've been using sodium hydroxide. Again, I haven't fully shared the details because it's something that can be a little bit sketchy on that one, so you definitely got to know what you're doing and be extra cautious with it. But it does magical results for pH, and that again with some calcium, and those are both hooked up to a dose, and those are dosed via Trident controlled dosing, and that's been working really well. Just kind of tweak things on top of my bulk dosing. Other side of the sump, nothing overly exciting and new on this side. Skimmer could use a good cleaning, so I'll have to work on that soon. I do have CO2 pellets on top. Did do a video ages ago on that one, but my DIY recirculating. Little nori, the daily's morning diet. Got the good old Clarity filter roller built into the custom Geo's Reef sump, which has been really awesome. Could use a little bit of a cleaning, so we'll add that to the do list for the near future. And if we go one more over to the control station. So I do have the custom adaptive reef controller board. We got my small army of dosas, got the L2 and the 2 MP60s. This guy is the calcium reactor, so this is the workhorse that basically runs 24/7. Got one for auto water changes when I do them, and the rest are for all the bits of random dosing. Or for the trace elements, if we look inside and behind, we got the Mastertronic, the Alcatronic, and the Trident. I did turn it into the baby Trident. It did 3D print a custom housing just because I had to fit it inside of here. That, and I do really appreciate the tray and how easy it is to swap the bottles on it. It just makes life so much easier. And otherwise, I'd say everything on the tank has been doing really well. I've been very happy. Trying control dosing has been awesome. It does work very well on top of the calcium reactor, the calc. I know it is sometimes kind of funky using, 3 different methods. Like I got calcium reactor, I got Calcwaster, and I got regular dosing of 2-part on top of that. But I do also kind of see it as a bit of a way of adding extra redundancy to the tank. So I mean, if one method had an issue, there's still 2 going, right? So it's, might not going to drop, at 1.5, 2 DKH in a day. It might only drop, half. So it does kind of lessen the issue if one does kind of happen. Otherwise, I don't think I've done any other really big changes on the tank other than a little maintenance and love, like the water change, cleaning the return pump. And I'll probably do a little more maintenance on it in the near future, probably give the calc reactor a good cleaning and, remix up all the dosing stuff's probably on the list for this week. Looking down the tank, we do got that wonderful, awesome clarity from the ozone, which I definitely do love and would recommend it for anyone with a larger system. I do think it is just such a good way to go. Make sure you use a lid, don't let any of your little fishies jump. That's also a very big one. Another thing I get asked about all the time is my floating light bar. I have done a couple of videos on this one. It is made out of the 80/20 extruded aluminum. Really cool way to do, especially on a peninsula tank, because it just gives you that floaty look and just really helps the peninsula shine. Other than that, fish-wise, I have started to feed them a little bit more. I always feed nori in the morning and frozen at night, but I've started to randomly add pellets a lot more. So I am thinking I might put an auto feeder back on the tank and give them a little more midday snacks as well. I think it is good for the health of the fish, and I do also think it will help reduce some aggression, again, aka some nipped fins. So I do think that does go a long way. Alright guys, hopefully you enjoyed that update on the Waterbox 7225. If you have any questions on it, as always, let me know in the comments below. If you did enjoy this, be sure to hit that like button, feed that YouTube algorithm, and give me a little love. Always appreciated. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. Again, I come up with videos every week, and I also do a live stream every Wednesday evening, so there's always lots of great reefing content coming. I am very, very passionate about this hobby, and I do love sharing it. If you guys got anything that you want me to dig into the future for future videos, again, let me know in the comments. Alright guys, hit the subscribe, hit that like, and I'll catch you guys on next week's video.